there, this is Wafa Al-Abedat. You're listening to the Women Power Podcast, a subsidiary platform to the Women Power Summit, the largest event in MENA, with the aim of empowering women and helping them achieve their absolute highest potential. Each week on the Women Power Podcast, you will hear honest, vulnerable, authentic, real conversations from inspiring women. These women will share their experiences and stories into what it takes to build a successful business and career. The podcast will share insight and inspiration and hopefully inspire action and lead change. Noor Tehini grew up in Abu Dhabi and went on to study politics and international relations in the UK, subsequently acquiring a master's degree in publishing studies. After a stint in academic publishing, she moved to Dubai to assume the position of managing editor and later head of content at Savoir Faire, the Middle East's first online fashion magazine, where she oversaw a vast editorial team and was responsible for the market-leading publication's social media strategy. Noor also represented Savoir Faire internationally during Fashion Week. After a 7-year stint in the fashion industry, she co-founded Goodness, the region's first platform dedicated to tackling topics relating to women's wellness in a real, honest, and holistic way. To date, Goodness has shed light on topics that have previously only been whispered about amongst women in the Middle East, including postpartum depression and marital issues. Noor is also the host of the newly launched Goodness podcast, which features real women and real stories from the Middle East. Welcome, Noor. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really pumped. I've been following you on Instagram for quite some time, and I've seen you transition through multiple kind of career phases, really bringing your A game, I think, every time. I'm so excited to get started. So the first question, or the elephant in the room, how are you doing with COVID? These are really mad times. How are you coping?
Personally, I go through sort of waves. I'm the kind of person who will throw herself into hyper productivity when something doesn't go right. So for the first few weeks of this whole pandemic, I was baking sourdough and I was taking baths every other night, and I was trying every mask on the market, and I was writing and reading and just being so productive as a way to sort of drown out the noise, I guess. And then a few weeks into that, I kind of crashed and it all came flooding over me. But I think what's interesting is that even if we're not directly affected by coronavirus, in the sense that we haven't been sick, we don't know someone who's been sick, our jobs are safe, we haven't lost, a work or a home or whatever it is, we are still internalizing that stress and that sort of global anxiety without even realizing it. So that's basically the big realization that I had, because although I kept telling myself everything's fine and this is the kind of downtime I've been waiting for and look how much I can get done and I finally sorted through all my closet and all that stuff, it does affect you and you do internalize it. And I think even if you don't think that you need it, you should find ways to relieve some of the stress or the anxiety, or maybe slow down and tune into what you're really feeling. I think that was a big realization for me. And then the other thing I would say is, as a small business owner, it's been an interesting time. It has forced so many of us to either pivot or resize or downsize or rethink our business model. And at Goodness, we're very fortunate because we were a very small core team who've always relied on freelancers so that we could size up and size down as and when needed. So it's been interesting, and it's been sort of a time of reckoning for businesses, I guess.
So when you say that you crashed, you said that it hit me a while later. What happened to you when you crashed, and how did you turn that around to kind of get back on track and get positive again?
I couldn't stop crying, and for no reason. I was just crying every single day for a good week. And even when my mom would call me and she would hear my voice on the phone, she's like, "You're not okay." And I don't really deal with my emotions. I'm not a hyper emotional person. I'm Capricorn. So we just keep these things to ourselves. But I wasn't doing fine and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I think I'm also someone who has an insane appetite for life. So meeting new people, seeing new countries, trying new foods, hearing new songs, this kind of novelty and excitement of life, I felt was stripped from me, which in the grand scheme of things is not such a big deal. But I think it was a bit of a shock. I couldn't stop crying. I was so down. I couldn't even work. I couldn't even be productive. And how did I turn that around? Well, the first thing I did was, that was sort of, I would say, around week 6 of lockdown, week 5 and 6 of lockdown, so a month in. I went to see my parents who live in Dubai, and I saw my family and I spent the day with them, socially distanced, but to see them made the biggest difference to me because I'm very close to my family. I also relied on talking to friends, which was great. And then I also have a therapist who I used to see really regularly pre-COVID and for the past 2 years, and sort of have stopped seeing her because I don't love the Zoom sessions. But I went to Dubai because they were still taking face-to-face appointments, and I saw her and we talked things out. And I guess the message is reach out for support, whether it's from friends, family, or professionals. I did all three.
I totally feel you about the part when you saw your family. I haven't seen my family for a while, and I remember seeing them on a Friday, and they just lived 10 minutes away from me. But I think when I saw them, it was just like, I felt like I was traveling. I got dressed up, I put on makeup. It was just so nice. And I always take that Friday lunch for granted because it happens every week, but it was so special to go that day. And we do like a quiz night with friends every Thursday, and there's like a bunch of people, and I can't tell you how much that quiz night means to me because I just get to be social and see other people, and it's a nice way to just connect with other humans, which is a great way to come back to ourselves or just to kind of normalize the situation. But that's awesome. I love that you have a therapist. I don't know a lot of people who talk openly about like, or say that so openly.
I have many therapists.
You have many therapists.
I believe hugely in therapy, and I think that we should all get professional help if we feel like we need it, if we feel like we're struggling. And a lot of people say, you get a personal trainer for your body, why wouldn't you get a therapist for your mind? Someone who helps you navigate and understand it. I started to see a therapist about 2 years ago, probably, and I went to see her. She specializes in eating disorders, and I went to see her because I was in a situation where my eating disorder had just gotten worse, and it was sort of like a remnant of eating disorders from my childhood, and stress and the industry I was in and the environment I was in, etc. Anyway, it all compounded, and I reached out to Dr. Karine Al-Khazin, who's the vice president of the Middle East Eating Disorder Association, and she works out of a center in Dubai. And I went to see her. It changed my life in so many ways. It took me about 1.5 years of therapy to work through the whole program, which is CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, enhanced for eating disorders. So she was sort of my first foray into therapy, and it's so help. Like, I mean, there are no words to sing the praises of the kind of difference that therapy can do in someone's life.
When you said that you had an eating disorder, if you don't mind, I just want to understand, because I'm not familiar with eating disorders. Is it like emotional eating, or is it something a bit more serious than that?
So I'm not an expert in eating disorders, apart from my own personal experience and some of the work that we've done on goodness. But from my understanding, emotional eating is not qualified as an eating disorder. The sort of next level of that would be called binge eating. And binge eating is qualified as an eating disorder. So when I went to see her, I had a full-blown binge eating problem. And a lot of the times, the sort of evolution of an eating disorder is that it starts out as anorexia in teenage years, and then it sort of becomes bulimia. And then from there, it becomes a binge eating disorder. That's what I found to be the case with a lot of women with whom I connected through my work with Dr. Karine. Yeah, for me, it was like a full-blown binge eating disorder. It was really time for me to get help. I think, as is the case for many people, I swept it under the rug and I denied it and I passed it off as stress eating, but it's a little bit more sort of intense than stress eating.
What was your first job and what did you learn?
So before I ended up in publishing, I had actually done an undergrad in politics and international relations. So my first real experience in the workplace was the summer before I graduated. I spent a few months in Paris working at UNESCO, so one of the arms of the UN, based in Paris. And it was so fascinating. And I think although very little of what I learned is actually applicable in my job today, the one thing that I'll never forget, or like a skill that I learned, was the ability to read through an insane amount of like text and documents and be able to make sense and read between the lines. So my boss at the time used to like put a stack of papers on my desk in the evening and say, read through these and try and figure out which country is trying to take advantage of this agreement. And they would do that with like vague vocabulary that would allow for loopholes, or they would do it with sort of vague terminology. And I'd have to read through it and read between the lines and try and understand. And honestly, as an entrepreneur and someone who now has to read legal documents by herself and make sense of them, that's been so helpful. After that, I moved into publishing. So I did a master's in publishing studies. And my first job there in publishing was at a book publisher in London. So it was actually the publishing house that published Harry Potter. So we used to joke that Harry Potter pays our salaries. We're very grateful for that. But yes, books were my first love before I got into magazines.
How long did you stay at that publishing house?
I was at the publishing house. So the publishing house is called Hachette UK. And I was there for about 2 years after my master's.
Okay, so tell me how you got into fashion and how did you go from London to Dubai and to this magazine?
So I'm Lebanese. My parents are both Lebanese, but I grew up for most of my life in the UAE. This is where my parents live, it's where my brother lives and my sister lives, and it's my home because I've never lived in Lebanon. My parents left during the war. So when I moved to London, I always knew that I would want to come back here someday. And in 2012, I had been in London for 7 years by that time. So I'd done my undergrad, my postgrad, and worked for 2 years at the publishing house. I started to look for opportunities in Dubai. And I was looking for book publisher opportunities, but there were few options that were as strong as the ones in the UK. So really like good publishing houses. So plan B was to look at magazines, which is what I did. So I started to look at the magazine scene in the UAE, look at the top players. I got in touch and I applied to a lot of them. I sort of cold applied, so I dropped them an email even if it didn't have any openings or career posts up. One of the magazines that I had applied to was Savoir Faire. I was in Ibiza with a friend of mine and we're lying by the pool of our hotel. We just checked out, so we'd spent like 3 days in Ibiza, and I get an email on my phone from the editor-in-chief of Savoir Faire, Hale, saying, you got the job, basically. And so right then and there, I walked back into the hotel and extended our stay for another week. And I emailed my boss. I'm like, this is my resignation letter. And went back to the UK, packed my bags, and within 3 weeks, I was in the UAE. When I came to Dubai, I had zero experience in fashion. I had zero knowledge of fashion. I actually bought a little notebook, and just before I started my job at Savoir Faire, I would research what were the big fashion houses, who were their creative directors, what was their signature style or whatever it was, and I kind of treated fashion like a project that I had to study for, like an exam. And so when I finally went to Savoir Faire for my first day at work, I felt super equipped. Like I was like, I just want them to quiz me because I know all the creative directors of all the fashion houses. And that's how I got into fashion.
So what was your experience like working there? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Did you fit in?
I loved it. Honestly, it was a really, really great team. It was a really small team when I first joined. I was pretty nervous about joining, one, because I didn't know that much about fashion, and two, because I came in and I was young. I was maybe 24. I want to say I was 24 years old. And I came in to manage editors who were older than I was and who had more experience than I was. So I was a little bit nervous about that. And I remember my dad telling me that if you're going to manage a team, you either have to know more than them or you have to work harder than them. And I was like, okay, I don't know more than them, but I'm going to definitely work as hard as I can. And I did. I really gave it my all. And it was such an exciting time to be in the fashion industry. Digital publishing was sort of, just coming up in the region, and Savoir Faire was the first online magazine in the region. So everything we did felt so pioneering and so inspiring. And the fashion industry was really inspiring back then as well. And I was at Fashion Week twice a year, and then I would travel all around the world with different brands. I went from Brazil to Shanghai, and I got to interview a lot of incredible designers and models and celebrities and be part of a really exciting team.
So you were meeting all these celebrities and all these amazing, creatives, basically.
Oh, yes. We had a great time, but we also worked really, really hard. So we would regularly pull like 10 to 12-hour days, have dinner in the office all together. But it had a beautiful energy, and it felt like we were all working on a project that we loved.
So first of all, Savoir Faire is a part of like a bigger publishing house, because it's even for a digital publication, I think even if you're pioneering, it's really hard to get these brands to really get behind you, believe in you. Did Savoir Faire have that structure where, you guys had ad revenue, partnerships, or, was there an investor? How was this company kind of built?
So Savoir Faire is part of Halo Media, which is privately owned by Savoir Faire's editor-in-chief and publisher, Halenia. And at first it was just Savoir Faire, and a few years down the line, she opened Halo Media to kind of house Savoir Faire and Halo Studio, which was a content production arm. So it was entirely self-funded, and she did an incredible job of selling Savoir Faire, of representing the brand, of really knowing how to speak the language of these luxury advertisers. And she used to tell me a funny story. When she first launched the magazine, she would go to advertisers that were still sort of stuck in the stone age of print publishing. She would tell them, "This is my magazine. Would you like to advertise on it?" And they would say, "We don't understand your business model. How does it work? Like, we don't understand, And it took a few months or a few years, I'm not sure, for everyone to realize in this part of the world the power of digital, because obviously the West was already sort of 5 years ahead of us on that. And yeah, I think the fact that Savoir Faire was such a luxury environment with really, really high sort of luxury values and really high publishing standards made a very big difference and allowed luxury publishers to trust us and to trust the team from the get-go.
It's not easy. I ran a digital magazine, and it was tough to get people to understand the value, even if you had traffic. And I think it's amazing that the founder was able to kind of do that at a time where, people didn't understand it. And entrepreneurial kind of role comes with a whole lot of challenges that maybe we don't see, people don't see. So it's great if she was able to pull that off and then build a whole platform around the publication. And I think if there's something that Savoir Faire has done is for sure hold a very high standard to creating content and quality content. I've been following it for years, and I think I've never seen it kind of go off the mark. It maintained that consistency. What did you learn from your experience there?
Everything I know about digital publishing, I learned at Savoir Faire. Throughout the years there, I had the opportunity to work and learn from a really varied group of people and of professionals. So it could have been, for instance, this sales guru that flew into Dubai and gave us like a private course, and we learned from him. We worked with the leader at the time, and maybe still today, in terms of web development and strategy. They're called Code and Theory. And before they built Savoir Faire's new website, they had just done the Vogue.com website in the US. So I got to travel to London 2 or 3 times, meet with the team there, be part of the strategizing for the new platform, see how they worked. I also got to learn from Hale herself about editorial integrity, editorial standards. I had some incredible colleagues, fellow editors who have such a passion for the content that they write. I mean, Grace Gordon, Savoir Faire's fashion director, really approaches with so much passion for what she does that you end up learning from these people just by the fact of seeing them day in, day out and working alongside them.
So what was your role? So there was another editor, the person that you just mentioned. Sorry, I didn't catch their name.
I joined as managing editor. So when I joined, I was managing the editorial and design teams. And then when we launched Halo Media, I became head of content of Halo Media, which means I oversaw Savoir Faire's team, Savoir Faire Al Arabiya's team, and Halo Studio, which was our content production team. So anything to do with content creation basically was sort of under my remit.
So were you actually writing the content yourself? Were you managing a group of writers, freelancers?
No, I didn't write so much of the content myself. I wrote bits and pieces here and there, especially if I went to Fashion Week or I went on a press trip with a brand. But in general, it was more sort of overseeing the content funnel from editor to website. So making sure everything from ideation to making sure that the content was delivered on time to approving the content, working with the design team to get the social collateral to promote the content and so on. But yeah, I loved it. And I think at the beginning of my career, I was really enamored with the fashion industry and so grateful for all the opportunities that I got, and I still am. But I think it all changed the day I watched this documentary called True Cost. So True Cost is a documentary about the impact of the fashion industry on the environment and the sort of environmental and human impact of the fashion industry. And I went to Alcoz. They had the cinema screening, and I went and I watched it, and it was sort of like a really rude awakening into some of the darker aspects of the industry that I was a part of. Now, I want to say that fashion in itself is a beautiful expression of identity and individuality. And a lot of the big players in fashion are, like the most talented craftsmen and craftswomen who work with generation-old workshops and produce some of the most beautiful pieces you ever see in your life. And that's beautiful and that's great. But the problem is with fast fashion. So your Zara's, your Mangos, your Topshops, your H&M's, etc. I'm so glad we don't live in the US because they probably won't sue me for saying these things. But basically, the impact that they have on the environment, the little regard that they have for human life, and another big problem, which is the fact that they've created a mentality of crazy consumerism. So we're always buying, we're always throwing, we're always buying more. You go through things so fast. Garments have lost their quality. So, you wear your Zara dress 10 times and then it's starting to fall apart and you throw it because it doesn't matter. It costs you 200 dirhams and you can just get a new one. And so that kind of opened my eyes to the problem, and it made me start to wonder, what is our contribution to the world as a fashion industry? So, the kind of content where you're like, these are the 10 best bags of the season. The underlying message is like, these are the 10 best bags of the season, and if you don't own one, you're not good enough. I felt like the industry has this message that it pushes forward, which is you need these trends, you need these new pieces in order to be worthy, or in order to keep up with the times or look good or be liked or whatever it is. And that's how you end up with an industry of God knows how many $1 billion, because people feel like they always need the latest, the newest, etc. And I didn't want to be part of that. I didn't want to be part of that at all. And I, for some reason, was going through somewhat of like a bit of an existential crisis at the time, where I wasn't happy with the industry anymore. It changed so much, and everyone in the industry will tell you that. There was a shift in who the players were. There was a shift in sort of the whole dynamic, especially the regional fashion industry. It just wasn't the same. I had begun questioning again, as I said, my contribution to the world. So what is my message? How am I helping women? Am I really helping them with the content that I'm doing? Am I helping them? And I think that there is a way to help women through fashion, but I didn't feel like it was enough for me, or I didn't feel like I was doing what I was supposed to do, which is why I started to sort of think about different options, explore different avenues, and that's eventually how I landed on Goodness.
This podcast is brought to you by the Women Power Summit. The Women Power Summit is an annual event that hosts more than 2,000 guests to listen, learn, and network with more than 100 plus speakers and industry leaders. The summit creates space for growth, learning, discussion, and collaboration, with the means of creating a space where women can support each other, ask questions, be curious, and be inspired. So, thank you for sharing that story, because I mean, that was, you kind of transitioned into my next question. But I think just going back to your experience in fashion during this pivotal point. So there is definitely like when I was doing my research on your Instagram, so that's part of my research. I did a lot of research, but this is just, I mean, it's good to kind of understand the person's tone and voice through these channels. But you see all this, you see all these glamorous images of fashion week and great food and 5-star hotels. And I think that's also what people perceive as the fashion industry: super glamorous, super exciting. It's like a movie. But actually, there is a very dark side to fashion. Even on the ground, there is these horrible queues to the Fashion Week shows. There's a lot of pushing and shoving. There's a lot of cattiness. There's a lot of superficial.
People cry regularly at Fashion Week, just so you know.
Yeah. It's the pace is not human. Like the how fast and how much goes on in such a short period of time. It's very greedy. I totally feel you about questioning, like, is this what I want to do? How much value am I adding? Even like, I think as a reporter, as a journalist, or somebody who's experiencing those things, there's a whole other side to this that nobody sees. I used to work in fashion for a while, and I think people perceive it to be like, the devil wears Prada. And I'm sure you get that a lot. Like, is that what your life is like? And it's like, it's so much more grittier than what people think it is. So I think there is a whole misconception about the industry. And then sometimes you would see like a glamorous show, but then you'd go to the studio of this designer and then see like all these interns working on different things. So it's an industry full of contradictions and full of hypocrisy, but there is a beautiful side to it as well.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from that, because really fashion at its core is art, right? But I think also the digital media or more social media has been great in some senses for fashion and for brands, etc. But in others, it's really sped up the fashion cycle to the point where designers weren't able to keep up anymore with the attention span of audiences and buyers. And that's why there was a year or two, I can't remember which year it was, but you had like designers were dropping out of fashion houses right, left and center because they just could not deal with the pressure and the pace. And it's just like become this machine of like, more, give me more clothes, give me more trends, give me more things to buy. And you're right, it takes a toll on you, and it takes a toll.
Yeah, it takes a toll, and there is a dark side, and I think you can get sucked into it if you are not aware of your kind of personal mission and why are you here, or what are you contributing. I feel you for sure, and I'm happy to see that you took a step back to reflect, what's my added value or what do I want to do. I'd love it if you can tell me more about that moment where you knew like it was. So to me, Goodness is a podcast, but is Goodness like a full-fledged brand? And also, how did you decide that this was your next step?
I'll take you back a few steps. In summer 2018, I was like, okay, I'm going to Ibiza. It's like Ibiza is a recurrent destination in my life. But so I was like, I'm going to Ibiza for a week. I'm just going to stop using my Instagram account, because at that point it had really stopped bringing me joy. It had become like a duty or something that I had to do. And I've spoken very honestly about this on Goodness, which is that my self-esteem became very entangled within the platform. So the more likes I got, the better I felt about myself. The fewer likes I got, the worse I felt about myself. And to some extent, I do feel like that was also a product of the industry in which I was working in. All of these things you'll see sort of come together in one volcanic eruption, where it was like my concern about the industry, my need to give women something of more value, the way that the fashion industry had affected my self-esteem, the way that I felt about, the way that social media was affecting my mental health. Like all of these things kind of collided in one go, and I just knew I had to get out. I knew that for my mental health, I had to get out of this industry, and I had to get off Instagram. I left in summer 2018. I think I made a comeback of 1 or 2 weeks in 2019. And I was like, oh, I'm not ready for this. And then I finally got back on Instagram in January 2020 to coincide with the launch of our podcast and to use it as a sort of promotional platform. But I do get messages from people being like, why don't you post the stuff you used to post before? Why don't you post your shoes and your stuff? And it's like, I do think that it's so fun and frivolous and in a good way to I mean, I love clothes. I love fashion. I love getting dressed up. I love taking photos with my friends and stuff. But I have like a bit of a mental block now with the idea of posting the same way and the same things I used to before. I feel like I'm not that person anymore, and it just wouldn't be authentic to who I am.
So in that 1 year when you were off Instagram, I read this book called Digital Minimalism by Cal Newport. I don't know if you've read it, but it talks about, so this professor basically is not on Instagram, doesn't exist on social media. And he just talks about how, the pros and cons of being so in tune with our technology and all these social platforms all the time. And that we are literally living with an underlying sense of anxiety all the time, and that affects us. And it's like he calls it the slot machine, because every time you post something, it's like you're addicted to, like, you want to win something, or it's like the jackpot, and yeah, you're addicted to the likes, and you want, even if you want to post something and then you want to let it go, you keep back and you keep pressing, and you're refreshing and refreshing and refreshing to check those likes. And it's he's been able to achieve so much when he disconnected from all his social media platforms. So my question to you is, in that year, how did you feel? Did you achieve anything that you were like, I had all this time, this is what I've been able to do? Or, did you just rest? And did people miss you? Did you feel any like peer pressure? Like, oh, are you not following me on Instagram? You haven't seen my post, or you haven't liked my photo, or you don't know what's happening with me. I posted on Instagram.
So funnily enough, people's reactions was, oh my God, you're so lucky. I've been wanting to do this for so long. How did you do this? Oh my God. Wow. Like, people really all started to confide in me when I told them that I wasn't on Instagram anymore, about how much they wanted to get off and how much they were done with it and how much it was affecting them and stuff. No one said to me like, oh, why aren't you on Instagram? You should come back. No one. Everyone was like, good for you. In general, how did I feel during that time? I felt great. I felt like I had so much more mind space. It coincided with the start of my therapy. So it allowed me some time to work on myself, removed from the vacuum that is social media. And I realized that I saw a quote sometime after I left Instagram that said, don't forget not to care about the things that you don't even care about. And I was like, that's so true. Like, these people whose lives you follow, like it's, like it's your family life, or, your favorite TV show. It doesn't matter. It doesn't make a difference at the end of the day. These things that we hang on, like, oh, I must watch her stories today. I missed her stories. It doesn't make a difference to your life. It doesn't, like, I mean, if you tell me this is like a super inspirational speaker, and whenever you listen to her stories, it changes your perception of the world and you do more work, yes, fine. But in general, like, the stuff we watch is just junk. It's just quick, easy, funny, empty content. And to your question, what did I achieve in that time? I launched my first business. And I got over an eating disorder. So for me, it was like a super successful year. Yeah, so Goodness is actually, before it was a podcast, it is an online platform, so, and an event company. So before COVID, we used to have monthly events, or every month or every 2 months. We actually had launched our first wellness retreat that was supposed to happen in April of this year, which we had to cancel. We have a platform which is filled with articles from experts to real women sharing their stories, and that platform was going on for a year and a half before we launched the podcasts. And just one more thing on social media that I do want to say is that my experience is maybe not shared by everyone who's on social media. It's shared by a lot of people who are on social media, but not all of them, because I realized that there is another way to use social media to the way that I was using it. And I was using it in a way that wasn't feeding me. And that's a change that I've made now. So I actually have a private Instagram account, which I spend more time on than my public Instagram account. And on that account, I follow a number of about 200 accounts that really, really feed my soul. From inspiring accounts to entrepreneurs that I can learn from, to floral arrangement Instagram accounts because I love flowers, to beautiful travel photography. And it's become somewhere I go. I kind of use it as like a Pinterest of sorts now. So it's somewhere I go to feel good, as opposed to what it was before, which was somewhere I used to go and feel bad about myself.
Would you recommend a detox for is that something you're like, everybody must do this at some point? Or, did you feel like it was specific to your experience?
100%. And don't just disconnect and take that time to do things that make you feel good about yourself, do things that boost your self-esteem, do things you're good at. Just try and if you have some newfound time from not spending time on your phone, fill it with things that are good for you and that make you feel fulfilled, and fill the extra time that you might have from not being on your phone with things that make you feel good about yourself and things that remind you. Actually, the thing is, do things that make you realize your own self-worth without having to rely on other people's validation of your self-worth. Because the way that the platform is built, right, is it's validation from the outside in. I put something out there and I wait for people to validate it through likes and comments, etc. So do things that make you realize, without needing any external validation, how good you are, how worthy you are, how talented you are, etc. That would be my main advice. But yeah, get off Instagram.
And I do agree that you need to use all of these channels with a purposeful intent and just be mindful of your intention, or else you'll just get lost and then you'll realize you're going down a black hole. And there's this feature now that tells you how much time you're spending on these things, and sometimes I'm like, 3 hours, like that's such a waste of my time. I could have went for a run, I could have read a book, I could have put a mask on, and I continually go back and check how often how much time am I spending. I'm checking, am I going lower or higher, just to be more aware of myself, because I sometimes find myself opening it like in a really scary way, but like without even realizing I'm opening it. I'm just like I go on there like addicted, like I'm like, how did I get here, like when did I do, like I switch off and then I'm on the account and I'm just like like a zombie. Why did you pick wellness? It's a huge pivot going from fashion to wellness. And would you say that you are now the entrepreneur? Because I feel like in the past, and I don't want to really kind of box you in, but just so maybe our readers can understand what your kind of day-to-day job was. It feels to me like you're more of a fashion journalist, editor, and now you are an entrepreneur in the wellness space. So why wellness? And just tell me about the kind of your day-to-day, what's a day in the life of like when you're managing goodness?
Yeah, I think you could say an entrepreneur in the wellness space. I think that's a good way of putting it. Why wellness? In so many ways, my professional journey has also been my personal journey. So a lot of the topics we tackle, a lot of the people we talk to come from a personal quest of mine. And the reason that I ended up in wellness is because at the time it was something that I was super interested in. So I was, at the time, I traveled all the way to Texas to attend a wellness conference there, which was called Paleo FX, but dealt with so much more than just paleo. It was just like an unfortunate name that they had. But I would read a lot about wellness. I would attend events, and it seemed sort of the missing piece in my life. And I dove in headfirst. So when I was thinking about what to do next, actually, I don't think I was even thinking about what to do next. It kind of happened without me thinking about it. It just became this thought that I want to be in this industry. I want to be in this industry, but I also want to bring more substance to it. So I was following a lot of the magazines that are available in the US, in the UK, and there was nothing like it here. So the only thing that was available here were Shape magazine, if I'm not mistaken, and Women's Health, which has since shut down. Shape might have shut down, I'm not sure. But the thing about it was the conversation around wellness was so much about nutrition and sports, nutrition and fitness.
Yeah, it's a very narrow point of view of feeling good about yourself. Just like looking good in a bikini and just fad diets. I never felt like it was about feeling good.
Like you picked up those magazines and the covers often said how to lose 3 pounds in 3 days, or how to get, your summer body or your bikini body in a week. And I could see how restrictive that was of the definition of wellness. And what we really wanted to do was to have a very honest and raw conversation around the topics that affect women's wellness in a more general way. So that included mental health, that included, relationships, that included, yes, it did include nutrition and sports, but there's so much more to it.
This podcast is brought to you by O'Brien Hill. O'Brien Hill is a leading communications agency focusing on public relations, event management, and marketing. It's made up of a fantastic group of creatives in the design and PR fields. The agency first came to life in 2010 as my brainchild. Our creative consulting services were in demand in the UK after our online publication Sketchbook became an overnight success. Much like a proud mama, our agency's namesake is attributed to the place of its inception, Notting Hill. It's now 10 years later and we're one of the leading communication agencies in town, and we as a team are incredibly proud to be working on this very podcast behind the scenes. Check us out on www.obrionhill.com. So, I mean, there's this whole movement with Goop and, really bringing the wellness conversation into the mainstream where we are going into spaces that we haven't visited yet, and just like experimental remedies. And it's very new and controversial and edgy and cool. Is there a business that you've seen that you're like, and I'm not saying it's Goop, but have you seen something and you're like, oh, that's cool, but for this part of the world? Or do you feel like you're starting from a kind of clean slate and you're pursuing things you're curious about without really modeling another business? What's the kind of like path forward?
I think I definitely keep an eye on what other businesses are doing. So there was a time I was looking closely at Mind Body Green and trying to see how their business model worked, which was to have these classes. So they have courses that you can take on their website, and it can be like one class or a course of multiple classes, always to do around wellness. So I was keeping a close eye on them. I was looking at what Goop was doing. I actually flew to London and attended one of the In Goop Health events, which they had in London last summer. That was pretty cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at what other businesses are doing and learning from them and emulating sort of what works. But for goodness, at least, because I don't have any investors and because it's sort of a passion project, I give myself the space to experiment and play. So I'll wake up one day and I'd be like, oh, I really want to launch a podcast. Let's do it. And I do it. Like I only have to answer to myself at the end of the day. Unfortunately, 2020 was the first year that we had started to make money because we were building the brand before that. But then obviously coronavirus and the pandemic happened. So I don't actually know what the future will look like, for goodness. All I know is that we're going to keep creating content, keep having difficult conversations that people don't want to have, keep providing a safe space for women to share, and be really sort of flexible and open to whatever the future looks like, because I have no idea. I thought, 2020 was the year we were going to have our 2 big annual retreats, and we had signed the facilitator who was going to fly in from London a few weeks, after all this started. And I guess just we're very fortunate to be flexible and to be very lean.
Is this self-funded? Are you funding this all yourself? Because you keep saying we. So is there a partner with you?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, when I left Savoir Faire, I went to see the editor-in-chief of Savoir Faire, Hale, who I mentioned to you earlier. She's the publisher and the founder of Halo Media as well. And I said to her, listen, my heart is not in fashion anymore. I can't do this. And this is what I want to do instead. I want to launch goodness. Do you want to do it with me? So she came on board as a co-founder, and her contribution was that Halo Media incubated goodness for the first year of its life. So we used their offices, we shared resources, we shared knowledge and know-how. I worked, so I was there every single day. I'm still super, super, super close with the team. And when all this is over, I probably will go work from there like a day a week or something just to see them. But she still is my co-founder on the project, even though she has her hands full with Savoir Faire.
What a great, I have to tell you, this is one of the highlights of the interview, because how phenomenal that you managed to, because when people resign or when they leave or when they, check out, they leave and they take some time to start on their own. But you've managed to incubate yourself from someone who clearly is like a mentor who then became a partner. But it's a win-win because you get to maintain such a great relationship. You get to use all these resources. And really, it's almost like the organization has become an accelerator for you. So you're able to use all that and cut a lot of costs as well. You don't have to pay for rent. So that's fantastic. Like, I hope that motivates people who are maybe checked out from their organization but want to do something to maybe go back and have those kind of conversations with their employees to say, like, do you want to work with me, collaborate with me? Do you want to invest with me? Especially since you probably know her and you've worked so close, like that trust is already there for so many years.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, we were sort of partners in crime on the fashion front for so many years. And when I came to her with the idea for goodness, I think she, not to put words in her mouth, so this is something that she told me, but she said that she was also feeling like she wanted to have this additional contribution of value to women's lives. So it came at a time where she was also feeling like, I want to do more. I want to do more to have these conversations with women. I want to give women more than what we currently are giving them. So it also came at a good point for her. And I'm really lucky that she believed in the idea and that she said, yeah, let's do it. Like, let's go full steam ahead.
So are you currently paying yourself, or are you, as a founder, are you a partner that's taking profit at the end of the year? How are you rewarding yourself? It's really hard. Like, when I started my company, I didn't pay myself for the first 6 years. Like, it was so minimal. So I was very resentful, actually. But I think as you get older, you really appreciate monetary value to kind of, reward you for your time and your efforts. So is that something that you're doing, or are you like, not getting paid right now, but I will get paid in the future?
I was very fortunate to have been able to put some money away when I was working at Savoir Faire. So I have a good sort of cushion to land on. I definitely not spending much money now. I'm just home. So that's been an advantage to this. But no, I haven't taken a salary from Goodness yet. And I don't know if and when I will. But just so, because you asked me what a day looks like in my life working on Goodness. At the start of the year, I started working on another project, which will hopefully launch in August. And it is a project in Arabic, so for the Arabic market. And I can't share more about it right now, but it is going to be incredible. I'm so excited. And so I realized that I needed to be able to reduce the time that I spent on Goodness to the minimum time that would give me the maximum impact. So I had to take now we're going to the very businessy questions, but I had to take a very long, hard look at our business model. And what I realized is that most of my energy went into creating articles. And the problem with articles is, 1, it takes a lot of time. 2, you got to pay your writers. 3, your marketing spend, on Facebook, Instagram to drive traffic to your articles is high. 4, we had higher costs because of the type of platform we were using. We had to have, web developers that were constantly maintaining the website. And on the sort of flip side of that, you're fighting against human behavior, the evolution of human behavior. So people don't read as much as they used to. People's attention span is reduced. People don't visit .coms anymore. So no one, how rare is it for you to go and type in a website name to go and check, what did they publish today? That behavior doesn't exist anymore. People read things that someone has forwarded them on WhatsApp or something that they've seen on a social media account. That's usually how people are interacting with pieces of content. So I felt like all of my energy and my resources were going to creating this beautiful content and then fighting the flow to get it in front of people. And I decided that this was the year that we're going to basically deprioritize written content and prioritize sort of an audio brand. So podcasts, audio articles, which we launch next week, and trying to find a way to keep the brand alive, relevant, to keep going forward with our mission, but to do it in a way where it didn't eat up every second of my time for very little returns. So basically, I now only spend 2 days a week on Goodness, as opposed to the 6 I used to spend before. And that gives me time to work on the new brand that I'm launching and also to work on some sort of consulting gigs that I've been doing here and there.
Are you thinking of raising funds for Goodness? Is that in your plans to go full-fledged and build a whole brand, maybe have merchandise, do more stuff on the research side? There's so much that you can kind of tap into. Is investment something you're looking at?
So not for Goodness, no. I think Goodness was very much my testing ground and my first foray into entrepreneurship. And it's where I really got to learn and fail and try and fail again and basically learn what to do and what not to do. And it's my baby. It's my first love, and it'll always be there. I think probably more as an audio brand than anything else. But the new project I'm working on is something that we're going to be looking to scale in a different way. We have Goodness, I think. Maybe some of your audience will relate to this, but Goodness was launched, very, I don't want to say randomly is not the right word, but without structure, sort of in the dark. We're like, okay, let's just do this and see what happens. There was not much planning. There were not many resources. It was really, really like a project of the heart where we kind of just, you follow your gut instinct, you wing it, and you see where it gets you. And that's why I learned so much in the past 2 years. And I learned how to approach my next venture. And so my next venture, I have, a great solid board of advisors from around the region. I have a very strong branding company working on it, brand strategy. I have a incredible partner based between Turkey and Beirut. I have a team, I have the infrastructure, and I have the resources to take everything that I learned while working on Goodness and apply them to do something incredible for the region.
I'm really grateful. You've answered all my questions. I mean, I can ask one more, which is if anybody was going into journalism or editing or publishing, because I feel like at the very core of you is you are a content creator. What advice would you give them if they want to go into journalism or become an editor or join a publishing house?
I would say that get really, really, really good at whatever language you're going to write in and whatever language you're going to work in. Because, I used to get so many applications from journalists or writers whose mastery of the English language was terrible, and it meant that we didn't work with them because of that. But I think if you're going to be a writer and a content creator, perfect the language that you're going to be working in, even if that language is videography, whatever it is. I think at the heart of whatever you do, whatever content you create, is keep storytelling as a priority and authenticity. In terms of sort of more practical advice, I would say, it's a tricky time to be in publishing right now. It's a tricky time to get into publishing in general because the industry is so much in flux. Social media has changed the game. Facebook has changed the advertising game. Social media has changed the content game in general. But I would say as long as the content that you produce is qualitative and tells a beautiful story, then I think you'll always find an audience for what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Noor. This is wonderful. I really enjoyed it. And
Thank you. I did too.
Yeah, and I'm very excited. Let me know when your platform is up and running. I'll follow it and support you as much as possible. And maybe we can do a little bit of a shout out on one of our episodes as well.
I'd love that. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. It's been so nice speaking with you.
That's it for this week. Thank you for listening to an episode of the Woman Power Podcast. And thank you for downloading and streaming our podcast every week. If you love what you've heard, tag us on Instagram and follow the Woman Power Podcast and Woman Power Summit account for more information on our next episode. Please leave a rating review wherever you get your podcast. It really helps other women discover the show. That's it from me. See you next week.